everyone, so today we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. Now, if you have a quadratic that cannot be solved by factoring, we can go ahead and use the quadratic formula. Now, make sure your equation is in standard form, and then you can use the equation that you see, where x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now remember that a, b, and c are just going to be your coefficients and your constants. Now, when you solve a quadratic equation, you always want to try to factor out any GCFs. That's always going to make your solving easier. Always make sure your equation is equal to 0 before identifying the a, b, and c values. Next, simplify all your radicals and your fractions. Now let's look at some examples together. I placed the quadratic formula in the upper right for you to use as a reference. Now your equation is equal to 0, so go ahead and identify the a value, which is 1, the b, which is negative 2, and the c, which is a negative 6. Now plugging in your values into your formula, don't forget that the opposite of negative 2 is a positive 2 right at the beginning. Now, let's go ahead and simplify our expression that's underneath the radical. When I have 4 plus a 24, I can go ahead and again simplify some more, which gets me the square root of 28. Now, the square root of 28, you can go ahead and simplify that radical, which breaks down to 4 and 7. Now, 4 does have a pair. It's 2 and 2. And 7 doesn't have a pair, which means you have 2 that's outside the radical along with that 7 that stays underneath. Now, go ahead and see if you can simplify. You can simplify the 2's that are outside of the radical, which means you can divide them all by 2. When I simplify, I get 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay, here is another example. Let's identify the a, b, and c. Once I identify those values, go ahead and plug into your formula. As you simplify the expression underneath your radical, you get 49 minus 60. So go ahead and simplify. And you see that you get a negative 11. Now remember, we can't take the square root of a negative number, so we have to tap into the imaginary number system. So let's go ahead and rewrite as the square root of 11 times the square root of a negative 1. That square root of a negative 1 is where you get the I, and the square root of 11 actually can't be simplified anymore. So I have I on the outside of my radical along with that square root of 11. Now, I can't simplify my fraction as 7 over 6 is as simplified as I can get, so that would be my final answer. Okay, here's an example 3. Now remember that your quadratic equation has to be equal to 0, so I have to add 10 to both sides. So I get x squared plus 6x plus 10 is equal to 0. Now I can identify my a, b, and c value. I can plug in my values into my quadratic formula, and I can go ahead and simplify my expression under the radical. 36 minus 40 is equal to a negative 4. Now again, I can't take the square root of a negative number, so let's rewrite. That square root of a negative 1 is where we're also going to get our I. 4 is a perfect square. So as I rewrite, I will put the 2i in place of that square root of negative 4. Now you can simplify that fraction. Negative 6 and 2 and the 2 in the denominator are all divisible by the same number. So if I divide everything by 2, I get negative 3 plus or minus I. Now, here are a couple things to remember. Always be careful of your negative numbers, and you can only simplify the fraction using numbers outside the radical. I hope this video was helpful and you're able to solve quadratic equations with no problem using your formula. Thanks for watching!